Thank you very much for joining us here on The Key Points, and thanks for staying with us. Now, in our second segment, inflation rates for transportation is at 33%, household equipment and maintenance, 28.5%, food, 26.6%, housing, electricity, water, and gas, 25%. And those are the figures from the recent CPI announced by the government statistician. Let's hear a bit of him.
Respective central region recorded the highest rate of inflation of 26.7%, and the upper east region recorded the least rate of inflation of 18.4%, with domestic inflation, otherwise known as locally produced items, recording an inflation rate of 23.0% relative to imported inflation 24.7%. As was indicated, this is the first time that imported inflation in the last 29 months has recorded inflation rates surpassing domestic inflation with a difference of 1.7 percentage points.
So that's the government statistician, Professor Samuel Enim, there, giving us the latest consumer index rates. And the other thing is that Treasury bill rates are at 19%. Workers are demanding salary adjustments of 20%, but that was at the time inflation was 19%. So it seems the trade unions will have to adjust their bid. Now, not to mention the fact that incomes of pensioners have also contracted. All of these in the last 4 months. Government, through the finance minister, announced a raft of measures. Why haven't these yet made an impact? Let's hear a bit of the finance minister addressing some of these issues raised during a recent press conference.
41 African economies are severely exposed to at least one of 3 concurrent crises: rising food prices, rising energy prices, and tightening financial conditions. Finance ministers now call it, the dreaded 3 Fs of food, fuel, and financial conditions. Food prices easily about 34% higher, crude oil prices some 60% higher, global inflation has risen. We saw our numbers yesterday move to, I believe, 23.6%. Inflationary pressures, yeah, we have them. We need to find a way to get people working. We need to find a way to get appropriate capital and skill sets out there so that people, can work. And then we fight inflation that way. But certainly, the Africa Development Bank itself is looking through a 1.5 billion sort of intervention in the food crisis because by the very nature of what is happening now, we are losing about 30 million tons of food that come, and maybe 2 million tons of fertilizer, which will lead to about 20-30% reduction in productivity. So we have to find a way to get fertilizer to our people and also resources so that we've been very lucky with the rains, so we can mobilize and store to be able. Fortunately, a lot of warehouses were built through the SDI project, and that's what we'll begin to look at to fund it.
Thank you for staying with us. So we're talking about what seems to be an approaching galloping inflation in the year 2022, and it's been a 4% increase since February. I know that it's simplistic to say, but if we were to just keep having 4% every month until the year ends, we'll be ending up beyond a 50% inflation. Certainly, we know that government doesn't want that. We, as individuals, businesses, organizations, we also don't want that. Let me introduce our guests who've joined us for the second segment. To my immediate left is Dr. Edu Owusu-Sarkodie, who is an economist, lecturer at the University of Ghana. You're welcome.
Thank you.
I miss your funkified, bushy, yankified hair.
I'll leave it on next time.
Next time you have to come with it. You have to look like your students.
Yes.
Let me welcome Dr. Joseph Obing, the National President of GUTA. You are much welcome, sir. Thank you for making time for us again.
Thank you.
And his good friend on the other side, the chairman for the Greater Accra Association of Ghana Industries, Shonam Apelu Wezon. You're welcome. All right, thank you. So I'll start with Dr. Obing. How have these inflation figures affected you?
Yeah.
And your members?
Yeah. Thank you very much for this question. Mostly when inflation goes up, people even start thinking that it's a deliberate ploy by traders to increase prices deliberately. It is not true. That's what mostly they say, that traders are taking advantage of the situation and increase prices. But when there's inflation, on the contrary, businesses suffer a lot, because if you look at inflation, it pushes other factors up, like the interest rate. Now the interest rates have gone up, which have also brought another burden, layer of burden on cost of doing business.
I didn't check the interest rate. What kind of interest rates are your members paying now?
You see, the best rate was at 13.5.
Yes.
It came out to 14.5.
Yeah.
And then now it's 17. It means that the banks also respond to it. See, when it was at 13.5, our bargaining power with the banks came, and we were able even to source loans at about 19%.
Okay.
Now it's getting up again to 23, 24, 25 as it used to be.
And I think there's a Bank of Ghana MPC meeting that's upcoming, so it potentially there might be an increase in the rate.
If that happens, then it's also going to, in fact, all the problem of businesses have been the cost of capital acquisition. Capital acquisition in this part of the world is very high, and if it keep going up, then it puts a strain on businesses. And so what inflation also do to us is that it impedes on our growth, in the fact that the purchasing power of the consumer is limited. It has reduced to the level that at 23.6 means that the consumer will not be able to purchase the goods that you used to buy, the quantity of goods that you used to buy, meaning that you can also not sell and achieve your turnover levels. If you are not able to do that, and your capital is a borrowed one, it means that you cannot pay your capital, your interest, or even the sum itself to salvage your company. And most of the time too, we also have suppliers credit. That our suppliers give us, most of the transaction terms are on supplier credit. And if you are not able also to service your suppliers, what it means is that you've lost your credibility with them and you are losing out. So anybody who says that prices have gone up because traders are taking advantage, on the contrary, is destroying our businesses, seriously.
Can you give me a view? Have you had some of your members who've come to you and say, Wafa, I can't continue the business anymore. The freight costs are high, the forex costs are high, in addition to all these things? Yeah,
you see, if you look at the global commodity prices due to the impact of the pandemic, it has gone up to the roof. So high to the extent that some of the products have gone up to about 300% higher, because they lack the logistics, they lack the raw material. Because if now China is on the lockdown, if they are on the lockdown, it means that those who work at the raw material areas, who bring the productivity of this raw material, are curtailed because they are not working and they don't have the input to work. So most of the factories increase their products. Copper prices, ideal in electricals, used to be 5,000 per ton. Now it has gone to 10.3. Means that when you used to buy cable for 90 cedis, now you have to buy it for about 150 cedis for 1.5 millimeters. And this is what is happening. And so the volume, sometimes it happens that your capital is spirited away without you doing anything, because you were able to bring about 4 containers of goods. Now it will be very difficult for you to bring even 2 containers, because the freight charges alone, if you used to pay $3,000 for 1 container of goods, this time you pay 12,000. And so 12,000 times 4 containers that you use to bring is about 48,000. So that alone is your capital. So you then struggle to even bring the 2 containers. And when you bring it here too, there are other factors that is also working against you. And now the reversal of the benchmark. This is the time we've started feeling the inputs, the impact. And it is hitting us so negatively because duty have gone up. And didn't go up only because of the reversal, but also because of the exchange rate. Because we use the exchange rate to calculate the duties and all that. And when we told you that our capital have been spirited away about 20%, we meant it. Because December, the dollar was 6.4, and it came up to 8.450. Then our capital had depleted about 25%. Now it's about 7.8, where our capital have already depleted about 20%. So this is a very confusing state for you to do business.
Okay. So and that's where we are. This is just the second quarter of the year.
Exactly.
Okay. So let me hold you
so
there.
If I had just 2 points to add.
Go ahead, sir.
And so I've talked about the impact of the interest rate. I talked about the impact of the pandemic, the effects of global prices, freight charges, and I'm talking also about the exchange rate. Now, what is actually also not helping us is the migration, or when we change the policy of the flat rate, the VAT flat rate to the standard rate. It's also having a huge impact on prices, because on the flat rate since 2017, we have been paying flat rate for all trading activities. Now we are changed. We have been migrated to the standard rate. So we are paying 4% flat rate last year. Now we have to pay cumulative 19.25. It means that whooping 15%. If you walk into the supermarket and you are buying goods, about 15% have been slapped onto your goods. And so that is a quantum. So I think that's the last straw that have brought this burden this far.
All right.
And so these are, and then the shipping lines, the levies and charges at the port have all gone up because they all use the index, the dollar. When the dollar go up, they think that their budgets have come down, and so all the institutions also increase their the charges and
you have e-levy too. So when you transfer your money
everything,
abroad,
because anything that add up to your cost, you are not for the Christmas, you add up to your pricing.
Okay. Yeah. Let me come to Sonam Afelu. He was smiling when you mentioned the impact of the removal of the benchmark. And let me quote Dr. Obeng here, has your capital also been spirited away in the last 4 months? Okay. How are indigenous businesses manufacturing?
Great, thank you. Good morning to our viewers, and I would like to begin by saying that I'm happy to see my friend Sarkodie. We both spent our undergraduate days in the economics department at Legon.
Good to see you too.
Yes, actually the president of the student government at the time.
Ghana is a small place.
Yeah. Yes,
you never know where you will crash.
So I would like to begin by congratulating the Ghana Statistical Service for great work done. If you look at the report they put out, it's a well comprehensive assessment of our inflationary situation. And I thought that was worth commending the service. But that being said, as everybody can bear with me, the reality may be worse. If you live in this town and you were buying something from March and then you were trying to go back to buy the same thing today, you realize that the price differentials the general price differential may necessarily be more than the 23% that's been projected. But it may not mean they've done anything wrong. It's just what it is. I mean, things are really that bad at this moment. You know that for us in industry, we plan at the beginning of every year. So, for example, we plan to produce 300,000 tons of oil. And so we put our budget in place. So such high levels of inflationary rates puts everything off gear. And if it happens, it also affects government revenue, because I have to, as a producer, cut down my production, to mitigate the inflationary price levels. And another thing is that, you see, most of the raw materials we use are imported. And if you look at the freight costs, etc., they are so high, so much so that it affects the entire production cost. And given that, I've heard some people say you should just easily put the burden on the consumer. It's not as simple. It's not as simple because, you see, you're competing. It's a free market economy. You're really competing. So there's very little you can push to the consumer. So most of our members, to be at the safer side, will just probably cut down production and be prepared to face the consequences, effects of cutting down workers in an economy with these high levels of unemployment and so on. So we're saying that the situation is really there, and we need to see urgent action being taken in order to restore to normal levels.
Have members told you they are folding up? Because I remember the concern you had when the benchmark values were to be removed, and then later on there was a shift. But now with these inflation figures, the collapse of the CD, are your colleagues or members still in business?
That's a good question. So you recall that when we're having a conversation around the benchmark value, we predicted that a day like this may come. Now, the solution that will be handy will be local production. Because if we're producing all these locally and consuming, you're not going to have to deal with freight costs, etc., etc. So that's why we were very strong at saying that just let's focus on local industrialization. What we're saying is that everything that happened in the international sphere is affecting us. Russian-Ukraine war, etc., etc. But if you were producing locally, you focus on your local production. And that's why we're saying that the total reversal of the benchmark value would have allowed us to concentrate on consuming local products.
But that's just one bit, because even if that had been done and the CD remains unstable as it is, it still defeats whatever effort local or indigenous industry would achieve.
I agree with you, but you also bear with me that there's no way we can also come out of this problem without having a clearly defined local strategy to indigenize and to promote local production. Yes, as it is, about 70% of all the things we use here are imported. So naturally, exchange rates will affect our business, which is what we're witnessing now. But we're saying that, imagine that we develop local raw material base. Our agriculture sector is expanded to the extent that it can supply industry most of the raw materials. We are going to have a situation where we cut down significantly the raw materials, which is what we've been importing. That's why we need to buy a lot of dollars in order to buy the raw materials. So the call to really localize is what we're asking for in most fronts in order to be able to stabilize our system. There are many other issues, not only about the exchange rates, but also about policy environment, really. For example, do you know that once you're a local producer, if you do the straight levy, there's 6%, of tax that you have to bear. If you look at the new VAT, the way it's been calibrated, once you're a local producer, there's a 6% of tax that you have to bear because you're a local producer. All of this can be done away with. Look at environmental tax, 10%. If you are bringing a plastic product at the port, to use as raw materials to produce, you're paying 10%. But if you're bringing a finished product, which the same plastic has been used as raw material, you're not paying anything. So in effect, the policy environment is not helpful at all for local industry. And all of them constitute significantly to the inflationary situation we're facing today.
Okay.
So you can't solve any of these without dealing appropriately with the policy situation as well.
Okay, let's just bring back some of the figures. I know that some of you have already seen regional inflation. Let me give you some of the figures. Highest regional inflation is in the central region. Shocking, central region. You know, then the lowest is the Upper East region. So central region is 26.7%, Upper East is 18.4%. But of course, for those in Greater Accra, it's 25.1%. For those in the Ashanti region, it's 21.7%. In the Western region, 19.7%. And then Volta region, you have 20.1%. Bono region, 25.5%. Then you have Upper West. In fact, Upper West figures are quite alarming, Dr. Sarkodie, and I'll come to you shortly on that. Theirs is 24.2%, and that's for regional inflation. Let's take a look at non-food inflation. Non-food inflation, the highest non-food inflation is 24.1% in the Greater Accra region, and that includes things like transport, housing, household equipment, maintenance, clothing, footwear, information and communications, education services, health services, all these things that are not food. When they calculate it, that's the highest in the country, 24.1% for Greater Accra. The lowest is the Upper West region with 9.6%, but Upper East is 18.6%. That's really, really high. Then, of course, you have 20.7% for the northern region, Brong Ahafo 21.1, Ashanti 19.5, Eastern 24.2, Volta 19.2, Western 15.7, and Central 21.2. Then let's take a look at food inflation, because that really is at the heart of a lot of things for many people. And Upper West is the highest food inflation, 38.5%. That's quite worrying, I must admit. Upper East is 18.1%. It's still high considering the location. Then, of course, then you have the lowest being Upper East at 18.1 though, but that's still high. Northern is 27.4, Bono Ahafo 30.5, Volta 21.2, Ashanti 24.4, Eastern 27.4, Central 32.9, Greater Accra 26.7. So that's some of the data from the Ghana Statistical Service. Dr. Sarkodie, I don't know if you've been looking at other countries. I've just got a tweet here from Emmanuel Yao Eje. He says inflation in ECOWAS region, Nigeria 15%, Ivory Coast 4%, Togo 7%, Ghana is 23%. What are these countries doing better than Ghana, since we've all suffered from the global pandemic, we've all suffered from the aftermath of the Russia-Ukraine invasion or war?
It's a worrying situation. The inflation figure for Ghana is the highest in the West African region. And you have countries that, excuse me to say, you might see them as small countries doing better than Ghana. Look at the countries with single-digit inflation as we speak.
Okay, but Togo,
Benin,
Cote d'Ivoire.
Togo, I have the list here.
Okay, you have the list.
Senegal, Mali,
Okay.
Liberia, Mauritania, Burkina Faso is doing single-digit, but it's now doing double digits at 15%. Cote d'Ivoire, Cape Verde, and even those doing double digits are doing better than Ghana.
Okay, but let me ask you, though, just a quick one, as you mentioned those figures, there is always the perception that the Francophones, their case is different. And so we shouldn't be comparing Anglophone setup to theirs, because theirs is pegged, they are keeping their reserves in France. A lot of things are managed from France, and it's all in an effort to keep the economy at a certain stability. Otherwise, the French economy ultimately suffers. Is it fair to be doing those comparisons then?
Well, you find yourself in a sub-region and you always want to compare yourselves with your peers. What your peers are doing right and what you are doing wrong.
Okay.
It is not, inflation is not a simple variable that you analyze and you say, this is the cause and that is the cause. It's very complex. So the reserves that you have mentioned could be one of the contributory factors. There are also other Anglophone countries that are doing better than Ghana. So what about that? Nigeria is doing better than Ghana. Gambia, I hope they speak English. They are doing better than Ghana. Liberia is doing better than Ghana. Liberia, as for Liberia, I know they speak English. They're doing better than Ghana. So the reserves may be a factor, but it's not the only factor here.
Okay.
It is important that when we are talking about inflation, we know it is the average. But you just mentioned about the geographical disaggregation. It is important to look at the micro units. So you can have the regional breakdown, you can even have the district breakdown, and have the household breakdown. And I'm happy to hear from the government statistician that they have a calculator on their website that each person or each household can go there and calculate their own inflation. The point I'm making is that if water commands 50% of your income or of your expenditure, then your inflation based on the weight of water will be higher than mine. So, personally, as I speak, fuel has the greater
huge
weight.
burden.
Yes, on me. Mm-hmm. For somebody, it may be wache, it may be kinky, it may be whatever. So that is a conversation we should have. What are those countries doing right that Ghana is doing wrong? First of all, let's look at the causes. Under President Mills, Ghana was doing single digit for 32 months. Under President Mahama, they did some single digit and then also did double digit, left it at 15.6%. And then under President Kufuor, they did single digit to some extent before COVID struck. So one would say that there is an effect of COVID, there's an effect of the war, we cannot overlook that. And there's an effect of the exchange rate pass-through. Pass-through means, and I'll give you a typical example. We have transportation cost, transportation inflation. That could be caused by spare parts, fuel, whatever. But we know exchange rate also affects fuel. And so fuel inflation may come back to increase the transport inflation. Another example is millet. Millet has, as a commodity, has its own inflation, but it is used to produce bread. So whilst millet price increase, yes, it counts to increase inflation, but bread price will also increase. So these are the major factors that we have faced. But is Ghana the only country that faced COVID? No. Is Ghana the only country that is suffering from the war? No. It depends on the magnitude. Let's take the war, for example. There's a war between Russia and Ukraine. It affects imports and exports. It affects trade between Ghana and those countries. But the extent to which, let's take the West African countries, the extent to which West African countries trade with them, the effect will be different. So perhaps Ghana depends on Russia and Ukraine for 60% of our iron ore, but 30 to 40% of our millet, our whatever, flour to produce bread. And therefore we have that effect. Then we have the exchange rate effect, our own exchange rate effect. So it is not Burkina Faso exchange rate effect, it's not Nigeria's exchange rate effect, it's not Togo's exchange rate effect, it's the Ghana cedi's exchange rate effect. So when we are talking about the exchange rate effect, we did a research on the effect of exchange rate on the public debt. Between 2006 and 2019, the exchange rate alone increased the public debt by 61 billion cedis. Mm-hmm. So we should not underestimate the effect of the exchange rate. So perhaps those countries in West Africa are doing better because they had better exchange rate system. And you know that at the beginning of this year, Ghana's cedi was amongst the worst performing currencies on the African continent. And so these are the major factors that we are faced as a country. And the biggest of all is our internal problem.
Okay, but let me ask though, we've known this for a while. The finance minister, hurriedly after that major cabinet meeting, that major cabinet retreat at Pedwasi announced a raft of measures.
Yeah.
Why aren't we seeing anything? Why isn't it taking effect? I mean, the exchange rate has come down from the 8 to 7, but it's woefully inadequate. Why can't it come back to the 6 that it was, for instance? Why do business people like Dr. Obeng and Mr. Apelu have to deal with the outcomes of this?
The negative effect of the exchange rate plus the other factors were so huge that it would be difficult to reverse it. Now, I have not seen, I may be young, but I have not seen in this country where there was a reduction in the interest rate. So, for example, we're doing 4 and now it's 2 cedis per dollar. I have not seen that. It's difficult to see that. That is why the emphasis should not be placed on the exchange rate as a nominal value, but the emphasis should be placed on the rate of depreciation, the speed with which the cedi depreciates. That is where the emphasis must always be. And that's why we are talking about inflation, because inflation is the speed.
Okay. I still have one more issue I need to deal with before I come to Mr. Obeng, Dr. Obeng and Mr. Apelu, because it's the fundamental thing that also affects them. Yes. It's the debt. We are borrowing. In fact, the view is the current administration have borrowed to keep the cedi at a certain level that it was unsustainable and it exploded in our faces.
That is what every government had been doing, and I did a research in the Fourth Republic, and all of them.
But this seems worse.
All
considering that we got 33 billion during the COVID era, why didn't we then cushion enough so that post-COVID, as we try and recover, then the businessmen don't have to suffer this?
So the point I'm making is that you may deplete your reserves to tame the exchange rate. You may go to borrow externally to keep your exchange rate, but it is not sustainable. And that's why we have seen over the years. Why did the cedi depreciate rapidly during the first quarter of this year? Because government could not borrow externally. And it is true that the only way, the best way, my friend mentioned, the best way to keep our inflation, the best way to keep our exchange rate at a lower level is local production. How can you have an agric policy that is run for more than 5 years and it is import dependent? So because of the war, we no longer have the inputs for agric. We can't have fertilizer. A middle income country like Ghana cannot produce fertilizer locally. It's a shame on us. A middle-income country like Ghana cannot produce millet. What does it take to produce millet? Just a friend told me that we need about just $2 million, and we can produce most of the items that we import. Most of them. You import from Burkina Faso. When you have Akumadan, then you import tomatoes from Burkina Faso. And I have been engaging with some of these people who are on the forefront. A friend told me that he is from Akumadan. And why Ghanaians do not demand the tomatoes from Akumadan is because they are perishable, too perishable. By the time they finish production, they transport to Accra, in 3 days they are rotting. But the ones from Burkina Faso, they can last for long. But why? What is the difference between the northern part of Ghana and Burkina Faso? What is the weather condition there? What is going there better than Ghana in the northern part? Why can't we have the same hybrid that is grown in Burkina Faso, grown in the northern part of Ghana? You are importing wheat and whatever from Ukraine, and now because of war, you cannot have your wheat. Why can't we produce the wheat here locally? Again, I listened to somebody who bakes bread in Ghana, and he says that Ghanaians have developed certain taste for the bread that is made from the wheat from Ukraine. If that is the case, then we are not thinking outside the box as a country. When we are confronted with a problem, we sit down and we fold our arms and say, hey, that's the problem, we are run away. We run away from problems. As a country, we always run away from problems. If you think that Ghanaians have developed taste for the bread that is made from wheat from Ukraine, what is the strategy? AGI is here. What is the strategy to produce the wheat, that kind of wheat, locally here? What does it take to do that? Until we seriously look at local production. I was talking about our internal problem as a factor, as a contributory factor to the inflation figures. We have our own internal problems. The COVID, the war, have come to expose the cracks in our local production. There are too many cracks there. The import-dependent economy was handed to us from 1911 through 1927 during Gagisberg's time, and it has been handed over to us. We have inherited it, and we are sitting down as a country. We seem to be proud of it. We are not doing anything about it. We import almost everything in this country. Water, amongst the food, you mentioned food inflation. Within food inflation, the items with the highest inflation in food, oil and fats. What does it take to produce oil? Palm oil, kernel oil, and all those fried oils in the country. Then the next item is water. Can you imagine? Water has the second highest inflation within the food inflation. Then the next is cereal. No, fruits and vegetables. You can hear things like watermelon, mango. If watermelon and mango prices are rising so fast, then you ask yourself, what are we using our land for? Can't our land be used to produce watermelon and mango?
Okay, so clearly there's a lot there that food
There
and
is
jobs
a lot.
needs to do there. Now, Dr. Albing, I know it's too simplistic to suggest that we're going to see inflation rise till the end of the year, but how are you as business people planning for that? Because we can't. This was April, and in May we know that transport prices are going, or transport fares have gone up by 20%. We know that it will add on. And so it's likely that this, and then if we hear from the Bank of Ghana, it's likely that the policy rate will go up a bit. Yeah. And so that will affect interest rates and all that. So I'm just wondering, how are you planning for the look ahead in terms of more inflation?
Yeah, thank you very much. I think we will sail through, because this is what we do. Much as all other Ghanaians are not going to vamoose because of this problem, we also do our trading. We make sure we apply prudence.
But maybe we won't be able to buy your products.
That's what I'm talking about. So I'm saying that the whole inflation trend is not good for, first and foremost, for the trader. We are just so much confused. And if care is not taken, most of our businesses are going to collapse for the reasons that I told you, because our capital is a borrowed one. Having borrowed our capital, the interest rate is also going up because of the same inflation. If we are not lucky, and like the professor said, they are going to sit down again, the Bank of Ghana, probably it will go up again. Also adding up another layer of burden for us. So what should we do?
Why not go into local production? Why not assist AGI to go into local production and produce for Ghana?
Yeah.
For
so
us.
That's the surest way forward. And he's aware that when we, during the benchmark discussion, the finance minister told us plainly, in plain words, so the way forward is industrialization. For that reason, he has set up Industrialization Committee that your very self is part, and my group is part. All that the Industrialization Committee is seeking to do is to migrate traders into captains of industry. And this is what, so we are going to identify most of us who have done, been successful in their trade, to see that they will migrate from the import to manufacturing. And that's what this committee seek to do. But let me tell you, I've always also said that we need a paradigm shift in doing everything, because most of the things that we've been talking about, industrialization, we've been there before. During Nkrumah's time, we were manufacturing so many things. And those things, the cars that we're doing, the matches that we're making, and all that, so many things that we've lost counting of them, because now it has eluded us. Why? Because the world system is such that a localization of industry even determines of the kind of product that you produce in a geographical area. When we say that we have to produce, it doesn't mean that we are going to produce everything. So those that we don't have comparative advantage, we lump them all together. It doesn't make sense. My brother was saying that he was contradicting himself in the first place, that our input of production is all imported. So there's a thin line. There's a thin line between manufacturing and importation. A clear thin line. So what we have to do, the reason why the first attempt by Nkrumah and all that did not succeed is because it had to come up into competition with what is being produced here with the rest of the world. Like Japan started, and then the sanyo that we're producing here, it has become cheaper, and then the sanyo in Ghana could not compete it. Because of what? Factors of production, localization. It is easier to produce them at a cheaper price. So what we have to do, the paradigm shift that I'm talking about, is to look from within and look at the areas that we have comparative advantage.
Do you have some views about
Yes, so many of them.
Like?
So many of them. You see, local pharmaceutical is succeeding. Whatever is making them succeed, we have to push it. And so we have to be able to identify those areas that we have so that we become a hub of manufacturing of those things. That's the only way that is going to make us super rich. Gary, somebody was telling me Chinese have packed, they packed their Gary and all that.
It looks so nice.
Who was the best? Ghanaians are not lazy. Go through the Suhum stretch and you see the Gary that we pack it they've done it so nice, some yellowish, and it's packed in rubber. Some people have put addition to it, put it in a label and all that. Whose business to project it? The trade at the chase and all that. What have they done to push this into becoming a exportable commodity? So look us are doing our best. So why can't China go and pack Gary and then start exporting to Asia, the rest of Asia, India, and even UK and all that? And so we need to reorientate our thinking. If you say manufacturing, let me give you another example.
I don't mean to put you on the stop. Okay, you give me the other example.
Let me give the other example. The other time I told you that those who are manufacturing floor tiles, they are making it. About two components, because you see the floor tiles, what are the raw materials? The raw materials is the clay. It's mountains that you see on every part of Ghana. The clay that our forefathers and mothers used to use ayua to make ayua, and if you go to Volta region, is there. If you go to Wasa, and so the abundance of this material is there. Some companies have come and they are succeeding. So all that we have to do is to encourage a lot more people to go into this sector, and then manufacturing of floor tiles and all that, ceramics and all that can also become a hub.
So it's not one. So that was the point I was coming to. That. So it's not about 1D, 1F. It's about identifying what is in a particular area.
Exactly.
We have a lot of it and push it.
And push it. And so Ghana will become a hub of those materials. Even the China that we've been traveling to, you know that because of localization of industry, the factors that make production very cheaper at one area, it's not the same as the same area in China. So you go to somewhere like Foshan, and then you see that Foshan is noted for maybe floor tiles. You go to another place that is Foshan and all that, you see that chandeliers and all that. And so if even there, they have areas that they specify. That's what we have to do. And then make a conscious effort to succeed in that area. Apart from that, the foreign dominance in the juiciest areas of our economy, where we don't have a retention policy, is what has been the bane. They are taking it all.
I agree.
If you go to oil, and then we say that we only take a tax from oil, then what will God even tell us? We don't have a stake. So we should make a conscious effort to invest. Say it should be a policy that all these juices areas, we should invest about 40%, so that we can be able to retain, save, into our country. All the gains in the juiciest areas are being repatriated. Now, let me tell you, the vast of the chunk of the monies are going to the telecoms. The chunk. If every Ghanaian now is saving through this, so they are richer than even all the banks and all that, and they repatriate same outside to their head office and all that. And we don't have a retention policy in there. It should be that we are all the vast that they were taking, we have to be able to retain about 40%. Let me tell you, the yield levy that we've been making noise and all that the finance minister should have done is to tell the telecoms that I'm charging 50% of all your profit.
They already have a lot of corporate tax,
whatever it is. Because they can't take it all from us. But we have to make conscious efforts to make sure that what is the demand push of the exchange rate that we are getting. Have we dissected it and see what is the pushing? The repatriation of this money, the local banks, the banks in Ghana now, the local content is just a few. Yes. The Nigerian banks take a chunk. Yeah. The UK, the South Africa, and all that, they are taking the chunk. So the retention is nil. And this is the problem, this is the pain. And people do not seem to know.
Okay, but now you've told us. Now you've told us.
Gold and retain only 640 million.
Okay. Tonam, tell me, now, does the inflation figure projections look difficult? Certainly, there's the issue of, local production. But he points to one thing: you still import a number of items to deliver your indigenous products.
So when you are not competitive, you are not. You struggle.
You think that if we have the raw materials here, we will import? We will not import.
Are you saying that
the raw materials?
Why don't? So that is why he's talking about a hub of items. Why not focus? Why can't members focus on things that we have a lot of here, so that we don't have to spend money forex importing? Okay,
he mentioned pharmaceuticals. Mm-hmm. So let me start from there. Yes, the Ghanaian pharmaceutical industry is doing so well. But I can assure you that about 70% of the raw materials are imported. Are imported because we've not developed the capacity required to produce same locally. It is not for the individual industrialists to do all of these. If I focus to do just paracetamol, I can only source for the raw materials and do it. So it is for the policymakers to develop all aspects of industry, and mainly the raw materials. The thing is this: if you look at the inflation on imported items, is about 24%. In fact, more than 24%.
Yeah,
24.7. Yes. So that's even higher than our inflation.
The local ones.
So you realize that, in fact, importation is not in anybody's favor,
including you.
I agree with
exactly.
You. No, I agree with you.
Anytime I bring them, it's always interesting.
90% of raw material. So there's
you've had your time already. So what I'm saying is this: you see, it's easier said than done. We've heard everybody knows that we need to industrialize. Everybody knows that we need to focus on local production. But the reality is that it takes a lot more willpower to be able to do some of these things. If you recall history, in the late 70s, Gowon became president of Nigeria, head of state. The first law he promulgated is that you cannot own more than 50% of any business if you're not a Nigerian.
And then they banned the importation of foreign clothing.
In fact,
I grew up there, so I know. Yes. So that's why the Nigerians dress Nigerian. Exactly. Yeah. They barely wear foreign items. So yeah,
that introduction of that singular pronouncement has made tremendous gains for the Nigeria country. Because you see,
but their economies of scale. It's a huge country. They have oil money. It was a time when they had the revenues.
I'm talking about the willpower for he coming to say that. Because you see, you need a lot of money to invest in oil, for example. But the locals don't have that kind of money. But the policy has meant that if you're a foreigner, you still must find a local to partner. So you have to build their capacity in order for them to be there to partner you. So it puts pressure on the foreign investor to develop local capacity. Over time, we now have Nigerians that have capacity, to produce. The Adenugas of the days, Dangotes, all of them. They are from that stock. What we are asking our government to be bold enough to take some of these drastic measures. Look at the rights issue.
Won't we end up as a pariah state? Won't people, other international countries where a lot of these parent companies are based cut us off?
Jifa, do you know of any country?
Being overpampered.
Jifa, do you know of any country in the world
locals
that have been successful or have made it without some of these policies? Do you know any country? At a point in your history, you have to be that strong. Look at the Buhari's directive on rice. See the result. Initially, when he issued the directive that they have to consume rice locally, everybody thought this guy was a joke. Everybody thought so. But over time, they have to endure the pain. They have to now encourage local producers of rice. In fact, I've got friends from Zimbabwe who are Zimbabwean who have relocated to Nigeria to engage in rice farming because they've created an environment for Africans to thrive. The result is tremendous. You see the harvest they've had. I am keen to see that in Ghana. But if you are waiting, I don't know to what extent that we are going to continue to wait. We are waiting for what are we waiting for? We need to be strong enough to say that, okay, now rice, we're cutting it by 50%, importation of it. And then we follow suit. Another thing I would like to say in this regard is also that we all also tend to continue to blame government. But as citizens, we have to accept part of the blame. If all of us develop appetite for consuming foreign goods, if you cook a local rice, then people begin to criticize and so on. But I can assure you that if you begin to consume the local product, that allows them to improve. You give them feedback, etc., etc. And by so doing, you see that will flourish. And why don't we have policies that says that every government procurement should have procurement of local products first?
So at least schools, mass hospitals.
You see the Ghanaian entrepreneur who rise up to the occasion, we will. But the policy must be very clear on some of these things.
Okay.
But the free for all, where everybody is keen to consume the foreign product, it's very worrying.
Okay. Let me read some text messages. This one says, in the last 4 years, Ghanaians were praising President Akufo-Addo, and now the same Ghanaians are crucifying President Akufo-Addo as if he brought the global hardship. This one says, the submission of Prof is factually inaccurate because 70% of Ghanaians take cocoa and kose as their breakfast. So what's the point that Ghanaians consume a lot of wheat from Ukraine? So don't you see all the bread? Don't you see all the bread that people consume? The cake, local cake that people consume from flour, all the, biscuit products.
In fact, 3 days ago, I was at Takrady Harbour, and the officer was showing me the container that they normally have the Ukrainian wheat, and it's empty.
It's empty.
Yes, because they are unable to import.
It's not coming. This one said, sorry, I've missed this. This one said, Jifa, please allow Dr. Sarkodie to flow. He's exposing the cracks in the Ghanaian economy, and it's very interesting. And that's from Elias, watching us live from Idra. This one from Alex Govi says, I thought cocoa goes with bread. Bread is a complementary product that most people, including Ghanaians, consume anytime, not necessarily for breakfast. Stop being mischievous, man. And that's from Alex Govi. This one from Joseph says, our leaders are not helping us. See all these good ideas your panelists are bringing up. I think it's time the government comes out publicly to seek the views of Ghanaians. Well, they've been doing that. Dr. Obing told us that they've actually formed a committee to look at transition.
Several of them.
Several committees, yeah. So let me come back to you, Dr. Sarkodie. So what's your projection for year end? I mean, some are projecting 40% inflation. Do you think that's exaggerated?
That's scary.
I may not be able to mention specific figure, but if things continue like this, already we are dealing with 23.6% without the increment in utility prices. So if ECG succeeds, if Ghana Water also succeeds with the proposed increment, we may have a higher inflation rate than what we are recording this month or last month. Then the workers, you and I, we are asking government to increase our salaries. Why? Because according to the National Tripartite Committee formula for calculating the minimum wage, inflation is a key variable in the formula. Therefore, anytime inflation rate rises, we agitate for increase in salaries. But the economics is saying that the best way to ask for salary increment is when your productivity has increased. That is the only way to control inflation, with salary increments. When there is productivity, then when you increase salaries, there will be no inflation. At the state we find ourselves, it is difficult to measure productivity, and that is why they keep mentioning inflation as a key variable for increase in salaries. If workers succeed and government heeds to the cry of workers and increase their salaries as we speak now, inflation will worsen.
But we can't say we won't give...
I'm coming. I don't want to be misquoted. The increase in salaries must be accompanied by a commensurate increase in production.
Productivity, yeah.
With that production, we will have the supply side inflation, and also the increase in salaries will cause the demand side inflation. What you know, more money chasing fewer goods. That is the demand side of inflation. And so, in as much as workers, I am a worker, if government increases my salary, I'll be happy. I'll go and chop the money and enjoy myself. But I'm saying that as a country, the government should increase salaries. Yes, it is true. But that increment must be accompanied with production. Other than that, then we are going to see a worsened inflation rate. But what are we talking about? We are talking about inflation. How do you resolve it? Food inflation. I don't even want to worry myself with the non-food inflation. Okay. Because food inflation is higher than the non-food inflation. So let's talk about food. What are the items, the top 15 items? Now, that is why I mentioned in my earlier submission that it is important to disaggregate inflation so that we can find where those leakages are coming from and we can plug them. The top 5, this is from Ghana Fiscal Service, not my calculation. The top 15 items with the highest inflation in Ghana, listen to their names. Top 15, grapes, diesel.
I haven't eaten some.
Avocado pear, petrol, bush meat, watermelon, solid food, that's firewood, okra, kondo, maize, mango, millet, gas. This is year on year. Listen to the month on month.
No, so just repeat that again.
The year on year, the items with the highest inflation rate in Ghana, top 15. I think I could not get the 14 and 15, but I have the top 13 here. Grapes, 101% inflation. Diesel, 90.9% inflation. Avocado pear, 89.2%. Petrol, 73.5%. Bush meat, 66.9%. Watermelon, 64.7%. Firewood, 63.6%. Okra, 62.5%. Kondo, 54.5%. Maize, 52.7%. Mango, 52.5%. Millet, 52.3%. Gas, 51.1%. This is year on year. Listen to the month on month. The top 13, month on month. That's from March to April. Diesel, 23%, 23.5%. Pito, 19.1%. Sausage, 18.9%. Millet, 18.3%. Mineral water, this one, 17.6%. Imported wine, 16.9%. Washing soap, 16.4%. Orange, 16.1%. Cement blocks, 15.5%. Fruit juice, 15.3%. Banana, 14.6%. Granite oil, 14.5%. Petrol, 13.5%. My point is that the top 13 that I've mentioned, only 3 are non-food. Only 3. The top 10, out of the top 13, 10 out of it are food. We're talking about watermelon, we're talking about banana, we're talking about orange, we're talking about pito, we're talking about orange, we're talking about water. Are these things that we cannot produce in the country? I am not saying we should go and produce machines like my brother imports. We are not talking about engines of Toyota. We are not talking about computers. We are not talking about the camera you use at TV3. We are talking about cereals. We are talking about maize. We are talking about millet. We are talking about banana, watermelon, tomatoes, okra, firewood. These are the items causing serious inflation in the country. If we are serious as a country, we want to solve inflation. These are the top 13 items that we must look at. That is where the crack is. China, I was in China in 2019, that was before COVID. They told me, we had a conference on policy and development strategies. They told me, one of the things I learned there, that the first policy of the Chinese government was that no Chinese will go hungry. Mm-hmm. No Chinese will go hungry. Mm-hmm. Can we have a policy as a country and say no Ghanaian should go hungry? Yeah. So there should be abundance of food, and we are not talking about big items. We are talking about grapes. Basic. We are talking about watermelon, mango, banana.
That is why the level of inflation in the Upper West region is worrying.
And you have even brought something. It is interesting that 2 neighboring regions, Upper West, Upper East, one with the highest food inflation, one is with the lowest food inflation. Something is definitely wrong somewhere. And I thought it was a statistical error. So I tracked them from the beginning of this year. I couldn't go far because I didn't have time. So from January to this time around, 3 regions with the highest inflation since the beginning of the year, from January to now: Upper West, Greater Accra, and Brong-Ahafo.
Brong-Ahafo is supposed to be our bread basket.
Yes, and it's food. I was told that the Upper West situation was caused by fish. Where is the storage facility? We are talking about inflation, which is CPI. We are talking about the inflation from the consumer's point of view. So there's something about production, and between production, that's PPI. So by the time you move from PPI to CPI, something happens in between, which is storage, transportation. That is why when transport is the leading, the transport inflation is about 33%. And that is why it is increasing the overall inflation. Because in between production and consumption, something happens in the chain. So if fish...
So there's something about accessibility to the region, then the access to the fish, because their water bodies are also limited. I think the Upper East has more.
But that's what I'm saying, that I think Ghana Statistical Service should take this up and clarify the issue. I am still not convinced that 2 neighboring regions, one with the highest food inflation and the other with the lowest food inflation, there is something definitely wrong. Are you saying that fish is in abundance in Upper East?
Yeah, Prof.
Yes.
Can I come in?
Yes.
Is what they put in the inflation basket, is it universal? Is it the same across the regions? Because, for instance, if it is universal, then there will be disparities here and there.
Yeah.
Because a certain region might have the demand, the taste for specific items. Yes. That will mean that the demand will be too high, and then the pricing will be affected.
Right.
The same.
The weight.
So let's see
the items are the same, but the weight is different.
Yeah.
Because, like I said, even as individuals, for me, fuel is the biggest weight I have. Because I buy fuel less than 100 cedis a day. But fuel, because I have to move up and down. But another person listening to us is Gary. Another person's
Exactly.
is Wache.
I'm saying
So,
that.
so that's something that we need to,
yeah,
to
you
look
have
at
to also look.
significantly.
Yes.
Because if you do not check that one, we might not have an
We might not
accurate.
have
No, the
their
point I'm making
Yes.
is that the items are the same, about 307 items, but the weight is different.
Yeah.
So in Upper West, maybe the weight on fish is about 80%.
Exactly.
But you are right.
Yeah.
So but these two countries, these two regions, can't the regional ministers sit down or the regional coordinating council, whatever, sit down and said, how can we be neighbors?
Maybe they don't know, so now they know.
But no,
So
they
that's
are not. They are
something-
listening
so
to-
now
they are watching TV3, so they know.
So they will know now. And
They are
will have
watching
to
TV3, so
address
they know
that.
now.
Yes. So
Why you are Upper East Regional Minister, I'm Upper West Regional Minister. Why is food inflation the highest in the country in my region, but food inflation is the lowest in the country in your region? What are you doing right that I'm doing wrong? And let's learn from each other. That conversation must also start. The disaggregation of inflation. I listened to the government statistician, and he was also hammering on the same point that we should not always talk about the average. We should disaggregate and go down there. And that is why I mentioned to you the top 13 items that are causing inflation in the country.
All right.
We need to deal with food, the issue of food. Why can't we produce enough of watermelon, mango, banana,
But
pear?
we have so much watermelon. I see a lot of them rotting, by the way.
Yes, rotten. That's why I'm saying that something happens between production and
and
consumption.
yes.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
it raises serious questions
Yes.
about the storage.
The value
facilities we have in the
addition.
country.
Value addition is lacking here. Because if
Okay.
it's true. Because it means that when we produce watermelon at a certain season, whether we like it or not, we have to be able to force the consumption on the same season without thinking for the shortage period. So the value addition is lacking here. If we have the value addition, it means that food will be sustained throughout the year. And so we have to sit down as a nation and
look at that.
Yeah,
Let me
look
read
at
some
all
of the
these things.
messages because people are quite happy about the discussion. This one says, it's from Stephen Kwabenya. It says, Jifa, because of inflation, as a pensioner, the insulin I used to buy as a diabetic has now risen from 32 to 45 Ghana cedis. We are
to health
suffering more.
reasons.
And yes, there are issues about pensions as well. All their money has essentially contracted. This one from Adam in Tamale says, the inflation figures are really alarming. Austerity measures need to be adopted to nip this in the bud. Salaries of workers must be adjusted at par with these increments. We pray and hope for this to bounce back to normality. This one from Daniel from Kolebu. Good morning, Jifa. This set of panelists are very good. I've enjoyed listening to Dr. Sarkodie as well. He's really listed our problems and what we need to do to solve them. Jifa, the issue here is government financiers and certain individuals are benefiting from the state of this current economy. They prefer to import and put more hardship on the citizens. We all know the solutions, but they won't help. This one from Martin Akosumbo. If the one village, one dam concept was being implemented properly, the importation of tomatoes from Burkina Faso will be history. What the Savannah zone needs is water for year-round farming. Lambert Donko Rice. Good points by your panelists, Jifa. There's a company around the Akuse Asotware area called Golden Exotics. They are one of the leading exporters of bananas from Africa to the European market, yet they don't serve the local market. This one from Eric Agble from Peki. I'm really enjoying the discussion. I pray that this discussion reaches government and they will do something about our problems. And I'm sure they are watching. I know they watch. Yeah. I know they do.
Yeah, I've watched the transmission.
I know they do.
It's not enough for them to
so
watch.
Chona, the issue of what Doc was talking about, what happens between the production to the consumption.
losses,
And I know a lot of AGI members are into fruit production, but why isn't it enough?
So the thing is this, you know, about 80% of all businesses in Ghana are SMEs, actually more than 80%.
Okay.
Now, most of these people don't have the capacity to develop the systems required in order to aggregate and to give to industry for production and so on. So it is important that we develop a mechanism that correlates and help them with the standard required, and also make sure that we minimize the losses we incur during production. For example, you drive through the streets of Angloga, And you see that there are several tomato farmers who have harvested their tomato and have to abandon it by the roadside because nobody is buying it, and it's perishable good. Why don't you have a system that allows these farmers to just focus on their farming, and then the system ensures that somebody goes, take these produce and feed industry directly? Why is that missing link? We need either the standard authority, but essentially policy to help guide some of these things. Travel around the street from Pramprang going, you see several watermelon farmers by the roadside.
And then Somanya going to Akosombo, you see mangoes.
All of them. So the Ghanaian entrepreneur is determined to succeed, but they need the support. The different crack in the system has to be fixed so that people will be able to focus on what they want to do. Want to be a watermelon farmer, just focus on it, help them to scale up, give them the required ingredients they need to produce the standard required for industry. Because most of the reason why we can't export is also because what we produce lacks standard. And you can't blame the farmer. The farmer wants to succeed, the farmer doesn't have the knowledge and so on. So they just go and farm what they can farm. But there are standards to all of these. Who is showing them that standard? Which of the government agencies has to do this? Why don't you get up and do their work? Okay. So that all of us can be happy to produce.
Right. Dr. Obing, your final points.
I would say that if I compare Ghana's economy to a football team that is performing, then I would say that
we are Manchester United.
No. I would say that I'm comparing it to the system of football, playing of football. I would say that our midfield is broken. Yes. If that's the pain of Ghana's economy. Then sometimes we say that we do agriculture policy, and then the food will come. At a point, we see that there's a bumper harvest, and at a point, there's it means that the value addition is nil. And then when we have that, it means that the primary sources are in abundance, and at the same time, sometimes it becomes discouraging for those who produce those primary sources because we do not have the value addition. The midfield is broken so much that we do not succeed and achieve our aims. And this has been the bane. Look at even our workforce. You know, the Mayday, I even said that we don't have employable youth in the country. We've lost it. So whatever thing that we don't have employable youth now. Now, let's say if somebody wants to do POP, tiles and all that, most of us will say that we want a tiler or POP man from Togo. Even the apparels and all that we are showing, and they say that, you have made a big factory, you want workers to run the machines, and then they say we go to Ivory Coast, they are the best. I hope you've heard of that. And that we are sourcing out. If you do 1D, 1F, the machinery that is going to run the 1D, 1F have to bring expertise to come and mine the machines. We do not have. People do not even have the honesty, the trust, the integrity. If you employ them, they steal and all that. We have to look at these key points. And then our workforce, the Mayday, what I said, that what did we do at the Mayday? We did not evaluate the essence of our Ghanaian workforce. We come and do Mayday. You know, President Kufuor said that we pretend to pay workers and they also pretend to work. And that has been recycling and all throughout the year. And we are not dissecting this issue because workforce should turn into productivity. Even our workforce should be able to regenerate employment because then they have enhanced our productivity for a particular year where our productivity have been expanded, and then workforce will be, another set of workforce will be introduced. They are not able to regenerate employment. So our problems are varying. And we have to dissect some of these issues and then work. But I'm saying that the method is broken if I compare our economy to the formula of football.
Let's bring back party.
Final, just some quick text messages, and I'll give Dr. Sarkodie the final word. This one says, Jifa, the major problem is transportation. The roads are bad, while the fuel prices are also high, leading to higher transportation fees. This leads to higher cost of food prices. That's from Samuel Obing. And this one says, the problem of food inflation in the Upper East and Upper West is also poor roads. That's from Roxanne in Boku. And yes, so Dr. Sarkodie, your final words, sir.
If we don't do anything about inflation, it may get worse. Because already we are recording the highest inflation in 18 years. Ghana has the highest inflation in West Africa, both year on year and month on month. We have not yet calculated this month inflation if ECG succeeds, if Ghana Water succeeds, and if workers also succeed with a salary increment, inflation may worsen. We have to be serious as a country and deal with it. First of all, let's identify it and admit that it's a problem and deal with it. So what caused inflation? The post-COVID recovery, the war, and the exchange rate pass-through effect, and the internal problems. We can't control the war. Putin hasn't made up his mind that he's going to stop the war. So because of that, we are going to sit down there and say there's no fertilizer, and so we can't produce. That is why the conversation always comes to local production. How can you predict something that you don't have control over? You cannot predict the Russia war when it's going to end. And even if it ends today, it's going to take Ukraine more than 5 years to recover. So for the next 5 years, we should sit down there. We don't have wheat to produce bread. We don't have fertilizer. As input for our agri policy, we have an agriculture policy that is depending on imports of fertilizer for 5 years. That must be relooked at. I am very passionate this morning. You can see that in my eyes.
Yes, I am.
Because why should we sit down as a country and allow wheat to determine the prices of Ghana from Ukraine? Fertilizer. We want to produce, we have a policy called Planting for Food and Jobs, and it is import dependent. Yeah. And I'm not blaming only this government. When NDC was in power, they did the same thing. What policy did they make? So both parties, they should be ashamed of themselves and bring out a very good policy that I am not saying that we are going to do zero importation. No country does zero importation, but at least to some extent, some of the items, and I've mentioned to you the top 13, mango, watermelon, pear, condo, what again? These are things that we can do them easily. With the exception of cocoa, most of the crops that I've mentioned, they don't take more than 12 months from planting to cultivation.
6 months.
6 months you have your watermelon, 6 months you have your mango, you have your corn, you have everything. We must be serious as a country, from leadership to civil society to media to those of us in academia to those our friends in the industry to the market women, and finally, I remember market women. Finally, market women. I want to propose that in dealing with the inflation in the country, at the markets, let's start weighing the items on the scale. If you travel to other countries in Africa, they are weighed. So you pay for the items, whether it's fish or plantain, based on the scale, on the weighing. So we must start across all the markets in Ghana. We must start weighing the items on a scale. It will harmonize prices. It will harmonize prices. You don't need to waste time bargaining. Because if Gifa can bargain effectively, then she gets 2 cedis, and because I cannot bargain, men, you don't have time, you just go put the money there, and I have to pay it for 10 cedis. But if it's weighed, it will harmonize prices, and it will help harmonize the prices across regions. Because if fish per kilo is 10 cedis in Accra, fish per 10 kilo is 10 cedis in Upper West. And that will be a short-term measure that we should start with. And I think I want to really, really ask the Agri Minister or all stakeholders, the Makola women, the Abosokan, Abobroshi market, the Medina, please, let's start weighing the items on the scale.
Okay.
It will harmonize price and save us.
Okay, Chonam wants to make a final point.
Yes, about
Quick
the
one.
utility prices.
Yes.
They've invited us to listen to the new proposals.
Yes.
In regions of 1.44%, etc.
For industry to be more because you are paying commercial rates.
Yes, and our issue, why now? In spite of all this happening, I mean, the inflationary rate and so on, it's untimely. Besides, why not these utility organizations like ECG and the Ghana Water fix their losses? Ghana Water, you are making losses of 45%. Why should I pay for it? Go solve your problem. ECG, go and collect your debt. Collect your debt. And you see, if you increase the cost of power, it affects production for about 30%, production cost is into power. And mind you, the Continental Free Trade Agreement has meant that we need to be competitive. Otherwise, we will have the head office here in Accra, but other countries will be benefiting. They will just be here having conferences. So we really need to make sure that industry is cushioned, especially regarding the utility tariffs. It's very important for us.
All right. Thank you very much, gentlemen. And it's really been an illuminating discussion. I want to say thanks to Shona Mapelu, who is the Greater Accra chairman for Association of Ghana Industries. Thanks to Dr. Obeng, who is the national president of the Ghana Union of Traders Association. And thanks to Dr. Sarkodie for making some time for us as well. He's an economics lecturer at the University of Ghana. But thanks to all of you who sent your messages. Thanks for watching us up until this point. Thanks to the entire production team. I'm Jifa Bampo. Join us next week for another interesting edition. If you want to hear more from me, you can join me on 3FM Monday to Fridays from 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. Up next, of course, is Warm Up Plus. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.